Okay, so what inspired you to start your channel?
Well, it started during COVID, during the lockdowns. Before that, I always thought about promoting my skills, my knowledge, my services throughout content creation. I decided the best way is via YouTube. Of course, doing a YouTube channel is it's hard work. It's not like working with some other social network like Instagram or Twitter or Facebook or whatever might be the case, even with TikTok. And well, it was, a learning curve. My first videos were horrible, terrible, poorly edited, with terrible equipment and such. And I've been developing still. The production quality is not as great as I wanted, but the most important thing regarding my focus is on the content itself, the knowledge, the information. That's what I work hard the most. And since it's a business economics channel, my first channel is on Spanish and is worldwide economics and finance and such. And my current channel, Venezuela Insider, is promoting my service. It's in English and it's mostly economics, finance, but also social and cultural and travel for Venezuela. So that's how I started with this content creation thing.
Okay, so what was it like growing up in Venezuela? What part of the what part of the country did you grow up in?
Okay, I grew up in a city called Ciudad Guayana. It's on the southeast of the country. At the moment, was a very an industrial city, an industrial part of Venezuela. That is where a bunch of natural resources, commodities are located, and it's close to Brazil. And it's a lot of I grew up on the 90s, so it was I had a very, a very good childhood. It's a very quote unquote nice city for Venezuelan standards.
Mhm.
And thank God I had everything I needed, a nice home, a nice family, everything every person would like to have when they're growing up. So it was cool. Of course, the things that happened, with the Chavismo and such happened later. Started when I was a teenager, and then when I grew up, just fully exploded.
Okay, so what kind of things did you like to do as a child in Venezuela?
I remember playing soccer. Remember
Mhm.
with my friends back then. Video games, basketball. I did a lot of sports, also a lot of gaming with my friends, and also hanging around. At that moment, it's not like right now with social media and smartphones and such. So being on the streets a lot, but at the same time, playing together safely, and of course school and all that kind of stuff. So it was a pretty decent, solid childhood.
What kind of games did you play, like video games? Was Mario really popular at the time?
Yes, yes. It was when Nintendo 64 and PlayStation were starting. I mean, Nintendo was already the big player,
Mm-hmm.
and the PlayStation 1, I remember, just started, and I remember games like, and also the sport games like FIFA and such.
Okay.
So I like, between sports and gaming and that kind of stuff.
What about Tamagotchi? Did they have that there? The little
No,
virtual pet game?
yeah, the
Tamagotchi,
pet,
yeah, the little pets.
the little pet. Yeah, I had one of
Yeah.
those. Yeah, I had one of
Okay,
those.
yeah.
Yeah, we had it in the late 90s, mid 90s, late 90s, something like that.
Yeah,
Yeah,
those
I
are getting
remember.
popular again, the Tamagotchi.
I didn't knew that.
Mhm. Okay, what about your family? Do you have a big family?
No, not really. Basically, my closest family is just my mom, my stepdad, couple of cousins. couple of uncles. But no, I'm a single child, so I was a single child, so I didn't have brothers or sisters, something like that.
Okay. So how is it now with inflation in Venezuela? What's the rate of inflation at?
At the moment, nominally is around 400% year over year. However, the inflation rate is, I'm not gonna say it's meaningless, but it's not as important because the hyperinflation started on 2017, and since late 2018, I will say, at the moment the economy was de facto dollarized. So the standard for the economy is the USD. Most people earn their money on USD, or if they earn money in bolivars, the local currency, they do it pegged to the USD, their income. So the inflation rate is kind of a second tier thing to consider when you are talking about the Venezuelan economy.
How about with the banks and everything? Are people still able to go to the bank and get money, or are the banks still running out of money?
The liquidity on the banks actually are the kind of services right now that are suffering the most
Okay.
because they cannot lend money, they cannot issue money. It's very little as they can issue. At the moment, the private credits in Venezuela are around 1%, a little bit over less than 2% of GDP. Compared to the rest of Latin America is like 30% of GDP, the average in Latin America.
Yeah.
Even higher in wealthier places in Latin America, like Chile, for instance. And for instance, the United States is over 100%,
Uh,
all the credit issued within
mhm.
the United States. I'm not saying that should be the right thing, over 100%, but it should be
Yeah.
around, let's say, between 20 and 30% at the very least. Of course, if the financing goes to the proper sources, like the industry, like businesses, like technology, like logistics, like infrastructure, and that's one of the main issues that we have on the Venezuelan economy.
Okay. So do a lot of people get money sent from relatives overseas then? Is that still really common?
Yes, but it plays second fiddle.
Yeah.
The remittances that come to Venezuela are on the neighborhood of $3 billion per year. The size of the Venezuelan economy is around 60 billion. So that's just 5% the of the economy. So it's significant, but it's not important. On many other countries in Latin America, like Mexico, like Honduras, mostly on Central America, and also places like Colombia, maybe the remittances, move the needle. Not as much in Venezuela. At some moment when we had, this draconian situation on 2017, early 2018, yeah, remittances, you can see the effect of remittances on the Venezuelan economy. However, are important by a handful of families, a few million of Venezuelan families, let's say lower middle class. But for the economy, it's not the most important thing on the Venezuelan economy.
Okay. So how big is the middle class in Venezuela? Is it
Well,
just,
there is
is it like a small window of people, or how?
Well, that's actually is very discussed because in Venezuela we don't have the bunch of data that you guys have on the States,
Yeah.
both public and private. You have a bunch of data, and actually I love to study the U.S. economy because you have a lot of data to study, and Venezuela is very hard to get data. Of course, some private institutions get a resemblance of good economic data. Actually, there is a controversy right now on the Venezuelan society, and I did a video recently on that on my YouTube channel.
Okay.
Is regarding just that topic, the middle class, because there is one economic firm, it's called Data Analysis, and the director, the founder of Data Analysis, is a very controversial man called Luis Vicente Leon. He's an economist. He's a very smart man because actually I met him in person, and
Oh,
also
wow.
yeah, and I had a tweeted a few years later with him. But the man is a very smart man. The thing is that he kind of massage reality. He gives
Yeah.
good data, but he massage reality. And also he's accused, to be pro-Chavismo. I don't think he is a Chavista, pro-government. He's just like that's a business, and he needs to sell his data to someone, and sometimes he massage a little bit reality because the firm is not all economics, but also politic surveys, stuff like that. Well, he did this study regarding the middle class,
Okay.
and he established, according to his numbers, he established that the size of the emerging, call it emerging middle class, is 3.5 million people. That's roughly 50% of the Venezuelan population. The Venezuelan population is 28 million, and we have over 7 million abroad.
Yeah.
Over half a million in the States, just by the way.
Yeah.
The biggest in Colombia, we have over 2 million in Colombia. We have like or close a little bit less than a million in Western Europe, and so on and so on and so on. And sparse in other places in Latin America, and then, well, you can paint the picture with that. Well, the point is that this emerging middle class, and he said that the household income for that middle class is between let's say $1,700, between $1,700 a month and $5,500 per month, 1.7 thousand to 5.5 thousand per month per household. He didn't specify per people. So for me, it's congruent. I would say it's a little bit less, but it's congruent just for my data, the data that I manage. And also, I listened this day, this just last week, to another of these big firms, these big private firms that we have in Venezuela. Is my favorite. The name of this firm is Ecoanalítica, and they have, for me, the best macroeconomic sources for the Venezuelan economy. Actually, I use this data. I use it a lot for my own estimates, for my clients, and also for my YouTube channel. In my weekly newsletter. So I get a lot of data from Ecoanalítica. They say, according that the only 0.2% of the Venezuelan population makes over $1,000 per month, but they say per person. The other story says per household. Now, this is still a very big discrepancy between
that's a big difference there.
15% of the population is middle class, making 1.7 thousand, and this is over 1,000 just per person. Of course, if you have a larger family, 4 or 5 people, you can make between 3 or 4 people, you can make over 1,000 money easily here in Venezuela per household. The average salary, because there are one of the economic myths is that the average salary here in Venezuela, the minimum wage is like $5 to $10 per month, and that's very inaccurate.
Okay, so how much is the minimum wage actually then?
Okay, it's hard to explain and varies depending on the region.
Okay,
according to Ecoanalítica, my favorite economic firm here in Venezuela, is on the neighborhood of $175 per month. That's the average minimum wage.
Okay, so 175
that's private.
is the average.
Now, here's the deal. This is with the public sector. Is where is the issue? Quote unquote, the minimum wage is between $5 to $10 per month. That's on nominal terms. The thing is, you have a population of 10 million people. Over 5 million work for the government. I'm talking all the government offices. the PDVSA, the largest oil company here that is owned by the state. And also you have other 5 million people of retirees, pensioners that they receive, of course, the equivalent of a salary because they are retired. So
Okay.
according to the benchmark is $5, but they actually earn more than that. They earn between $100 and $200 a month, depending. It varies by case to case. Of
Okay.
course, they get this income is on bolivars, but they are pegged to the USD.
Yes.
And actually, the President Maduro itself, he recognized that the money will be pegged. It was unofficially pegged to the USD, but right now Maduro will recognize that it's pegged to the USD, according to the official exchange rate.
Okay.
So some people might get those $5, but usually the people who get the $5 to $10 on bolivars are people that are, let's say, on the payroll of any given agency but never
Okay.
show up to work or something like that. And also you have to put public teachers and such. So, but usually they receive the income in bolivars is close to $100 a month. I will say on average, because I ask a lot of, and I don't have macroeconomic data, but I ask every people that I work, every people that I know, they work on PDVSA, they work on the public administration, they are pensioners, retirees. So I will say between $100 and $200 that in some exceptional cases can be way higher, but that's the income on the public sector. Now, the reason why I don't disregard completely the inflation, the nominal inflation that is over $400 per year, year over year, is because they are getting paid in bolivars. These people, the 10 million people, both employees and retirees. So what happens is that the way that the government defaults on serving these compromises with these 10 million people is by devaluating the currency. However, what happened, and I'm getting too geeky with macroeconomics, is that the government on the, let's say, the latter half of the past decade, they usually had a very big fiscal deficit, and now they are been narrowing this fiscal deficit, and they are increasing tax revenues here. So they basically funded the government the past few years, I'm saying the latter half of the 2010s, with just money printing, and right now they're doing it via taxes because now the tax revenue is increasing on the country.
Okay. What about Bitcoin and like digital currencies? Is anyone there doing that? Has that become more popular, or do people just stick to the US dollar?
Most people stick to the USD. However, there is niches where Bitcoin and some cryptocurrencies are used. We have a lot of user of Binance and other these major crypto exchanges. Also, we have what in the US is called gold box. Usually here on the Bolivar state, on the south,
Okay.
because it's where we have gold. So people who like to save in gold. And but it's niches. I'll say way more people that buys crypto that buys gold, but both are used as a store of value. But by far the main standard for store of value is the USD.
Okay. How about gas? Are citizens still able to get free gas in the country, or no? Have they gotten rid of that?
Not entirely. Since 2020, 2019, 2020, gas was de facto they raised the price
Yeah.
from this nominal amount is almost nothing, is almost free, to 50 cents of dollar, 50 cents per liter. That is less than $2 per gallon. So
Yeah.
it's half of international price. And some people, special people linked to logistics, transportation, and essential workers like doctors, they have access to the quote unquote free gas, but still it's a hassle to get. And meanwhile, you can get the international gasoline, the one who costs 50 cents per liter. That one you can get it way more easier. Although the caps that were distributed among of the free gas, those caps are being reduced on the past few years. So it will be the trend is the free gas will be almost inexistent on a couple of years, maybe sooner.
Is there a limit to how much gas each person can get?
Yes, on the free gas, yes. On
Yeah.
the international gas, no.
Okay. I was just curious if people ever come with those gas tanks and just try to fill them all up. Like
Yeah.
if
You
you're
see,
allowed to do that, or if they're like, no.
no. They here they do that a lot, but it's kind of a they have to do it under the table, so it's kind of a tricky situation.
Okay. So how do you feel about the government in Venezuela with everything going on right now? Do you feel like they're doing a good job, or do you feel like they could do better?
Well, the very least that I can say is they can do way better. However,
Okay.
so actually on 2018, I believe it's 2018, The Economist wrote an article on Maduro that says that Maduro is arguably the least successful president in history.
Oh, wow.
However, yes, however, I mean the GDP contraction on the 2010s was 80%. That's something unheard of.
So
It, that an
80% don't approve of him.
No, I'm talking the GDP, the economy.
Okay, okay. I thought you meant the people, like 80%
No,
of the
no,
people don't approve.
no. I'm gonna get to that, friends. I want to explain that the
Okay,
Venezuelan economy plummeted 80%. The GDP, the Venezuelan GDP plummeted 80%. That doesn't happen, not even in a war. For instance, right now in Ukraine, the economy hasn't shrunk 80%, even with the Russian invasion.
yeah,
Just to get the idea.
okay,
Now they're done everything poorly. The government from Chavez and on the 2010s, on the early 2000s, and right now Maduro until 2018 they did everything they can go wrong. They did it poorly, and I have to say it. It's not way around it. And of course you can also blame the price of oil, but actually it's still their fault because they have to prepare better. However, since 2018, they have applied, let's say, a little bit better economic policies. They allow the USD, they cut taxes on imports, so that help a lot the situation. So they have, let's say, improved a little bit,
yeah,
and that's why you see 20% growth on GDP on the past few years. We're way far of the economy that we had over a decade ago. They are improved, I have to say. It's a terrible government regarding politics,
mhm.
but they have improved. If they can improve a little bit more and just stick with that, I'll say they will stay in power many decades.
Okay. How about democracy? Do you think Venezuela will ever shift to a more democratic society, or do you think socialism will be the main way the country is run?
Well, we have to separate the economical side from the political side. So
Mhm.
Venezuela doesn't have socialism. We have some sort of crony capitalism is what we have in Venezuela. We don't have socialism.
What was that?
We
What
had
capitalism?
a crony capitalism.
Okay.
Is that what we have? I have to be honest. We don't have socialism on the country. That's on the economic side. So of course we have some sort of free market. I mean, Venezuela is not North Korea or Cuba or anything like that. It's
Yeah.
terrible. I have to say it's terrible. The situation is terrible, has improved, it's still terrible,
Hmm.
but it's not like this draconian, like cartoonish version of
Yeah.
like on the Soviet Union on the
Mhm.
80s. on
Yeah.
East Berlin, stuff like that. But the situation is bad. We have a lot of issues, but we are closer to the average Latin American issues that, the draconian communist issues. And what I will say regarding democracy, Venezuela is quote unquote a flawed democracy because we have elections and such. However, allegedly, in Venezuela we had it's been electoral fraud since many years in favor of the Chavismo.
Yes.
But at the same time, the opposition is consistently have been able to win some major candidates on the different cities and governance on different regions and some seats on the National Congress. Actually, the Guaido came from that. So apparently, so it's very tricky to explain the political situation here if it is a dictatorship of a democracy.
Yeah.
For most people, it's a dictatorship.
Yeah.
Is a flawed democracy to say the least. So it's between a flawed democracy and an authoritarian regime on the country. That's what we have right now. I don't see that changing on the near future unless a black swan event happens.
Okay. Yeah, I was just about to ask, do you think it's possible that anyone will like overthrow Maduro? Like in the next election, do you think there's a chance someone else will win? Or do you think he will win again?
No, I don't see it. I don't see it. I don't see it. I think Maduro's going to win again. For one hand, because they have a very, tight grip on the power.
Yeah.
And for one hand, and the other hand, people don't trust the opposition. People dislike the opposition. The approval rate of Maduro actually was as low as 10% at some point.
Oh
Right
wow.
now, right now it's close to, it's a little bit less than, I would say like 15. And
Okay.
the Chavismo overall is like 20, something like that.
It
So in
was
the best
20?
case scenario, it was 20 for the whole Chavismo, not for
Yeah,
Maduro.
okay.
So the best case scenario is that Maduro has something like a 20% approval rate, and the whole Chavismo has something like 25%. But the rest of the opposition have very even lower approval rate, talking 5%, 2%, 1%. I'm talking the big guys on the opposition.
Yeah, that's really low.
Even Guaido, that was quote unquote the de facto president of Venezuela, he has something like 2% of approval rate.
Oh
So
wow.
way lower. So
Yeah.
even if the election is not temperate, is not fraudulent, still I believe they will win. There is an outlier on the opposition called Maria Corina Machado. I'm sorry.
That's okay.
Um, she will be the closest thing to a libertarian
Mm.
right-wing candidate that we have. And I would say she's probably the only politician trustworthy on the country. However, she's not gonna win. She's not gonna win the election. Most likely, we'll have the whole Chavismo will have like 10 years or so.
Okay. So have most of the presidents in Venezuela been men then? Have there ever been any female presidents? Or have they just all
Mm,
been men?
they're all been men.
Okay. All right. So
No,
our
but we
last
have a bunch
question.
of female politicians
Yeah, yeah. Okay.
on the Congress and governations, stuff like that.
Okay, so my last question is, what do you think is the biggest misconception people have about Venezuela?
Okay, I will say something that I already mentioned is that people think they think socialism, they think this cartoonish version of socialism of communism, like in the Soviet Union or like North Korea or stuff like that, or Eastern Europe on the 20th century. It's not like that. It's just another country in Latin America that has a little bit more of trouble or that the average thing in Latin America. However, the Venezuela has a ton of upside. It's a beautiful country, and also it's a cool country to visit, especially if you are a single man, you're gonna enjoy being here. I trust me, you are gonna enjoy it, and I cannot tell you how. And even if, but also it's a very good female-friendly country because most Venezuelan men are gentlemen, and you're gonna be if you stay in a nice area and know what you're doing. You, as a female, you also can have a very cool, nice experience as well. So goes for both genders. It's not like just this machista country just for men. Men are gonna have a blast here,
Yeah.
but for females as well, it's also a very cool country. I have to say.
So like, do the men open the doors for women there or no?
Yeah, they do it.
They do?
Actually, they
Okay.
do it. Yeah, the thing at the same time they're very sleek. I have to say, Venezuelan men.
They're very suave.
Yeah, they're very
They're
suave.
very suave. Okay.
Now, yeah, they're very suave. Now, the other misconception that I'm gonna explain right now because we have a bunch of migrants and refugees,
Yeah.
and this is not a misconception. This is why because I always in my channel I try to speak, with the truth, the good, the bad, and the ugly.
Yeah.
And of course, most of the time it's good because I see a bunch of good things in my country. Of course, I know there's a lot of bad things. I try to address that as well. However, many people ask me, especially people from the States or,
Mhm.
Western citizens, why they're leaving. Because the thing about Venezuela is not prohibited, expensive, but it's still expensive compared to the income and the salaries and such, and the economic possibilities that you have, because you don't have credit, you don't have we don't have very good paying jobs. So
Yeah.
if you want to make some cash here, you have to be an entrepreneur or something like that, or be self-employed.
Mhm.
So most people migrate, and I'm going to answer the question because I get it a lot. It's because the country is too expensive for the average Venezuelan in order to be
Okay.
here. So, so they need to, of course, migrate because they want to do an arbitrage on their labor. So that's why they migrate to places like the US, like Canada, like Western Europe, or even some countries in Latin America, like Chile, like Argentina, like Panama, stuff like that. So that's why it's when you are able to reach some income threshold, the country is amazing. But after that, before that is very hard.
Okay. So what do you think it will take to like get to that threshold for Venezuela?
A lot of things have to happen. And I mean, getting, be financially successful in any given country is hard. For instance, the country that you can say is the easiest to get a good financial situation is the States. And
Yeah.
yet again, there are a bunch of people that are homeless or they're underpaid or they cannot afford their own homes and so
Yeah,
on and so on
that's
and so
true.
on.
Mm.
So imagine if the United States is the country where it's the easiest, it has a lot of problems on that regard on certain niches. In Venezuela, it's going to take way more to reach some threshold. But I believe that threshold is not as far as people might think. Venezuela has the largest oil reserves in the world and also a bunch of commodities. Also, it's a beautiful country, so it has a lot it has some touristic sector, that some touristic leisure and hospitality that can be exploited as well. So if those situations, the oil, the commodities, the industry, and also just improve services overall on the country, the service sector, will take, let's say, 5 to 10 years when everything is done correctly, and that's not doesn't seem to be the case. Or some things that can mildly improve, just mildly, it could increase the standard of living to, let's say, closest to the half of the population and improve the situation. Not you still we're going to have some poverty rates and such, but it will be something way better that we had on 2017. Right now, the country has a lot of issues, but the country right now is way better than what we had on 2017. That at the moment was draconian bad. It was
Yeah.
horrible. Just to get food was horrible. Right now, the situation is we went from not having food. Well, it was scarce. I'm not saying we had food, but it
Yeah.
was scarce.
It was scarce.
Right now, the situation is the hard thing right now is for the average Venezuelan is making ends meet.
Okay. Okay. So how much money do people need there on average to make ends meet? I guess it just depends on each household then.
Yes, yes, depends, of course. Standard living, I will say close to 1,000 per household.
Okay. So that would be like the
I would
ideal.
say yes, yes, of course, it includes services and the food, and maybe basic services and so on and so on. Depends on the standard of living of the any given household.
Okay. Well, thank you so much for doing this with me. I appreciated getting to learn more about the economics and macroeconomics and kind of breaking down some of these misconceptions and everything people have about Venezuela. Thank you so much for taking the time out to talk to me.
Thanks for having me.
All right, thank you. Have a good evening.
Bye bye. Take care.
Bye.
Take care. You too.